Tonight on CFTK-TV, flu season is in full effect around Canada. The Liberals are rising in the polls and gaining ground on the Conservatives, and how tariffs will affect softwood lumber.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damian Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. We begin today in Terrace, where a long-awaited Zamboni has now been revealed, which is said to be safer, quieter, and less expensive to run. This new Zamboni will also decrease the city's carbon footprint as well. The Zamboni will be fueled by a lithium-ion battery that will be plugged into a charging station. This Zamboni looks to replace the propane-fueled Zamboni that did its service for nearly 2 decades. And for the Zamboni nerds out there, the make and model is the Zamboni 650. It is made of fiberglass, can hold up to 200 gallons of water, and the blade length is at 77 inches in total. It was purchased by the Terrace Community Forest and the Northwest Regional Benefits Alliance. Now we turn to an update on a piece of artwork that we saw last month in the process of being installed in the new Gitsan West Secondary School being constructed in Gitwangak. The piece, now completed, is titled Convergence and was designed by Arlene Ness. Convergence will welcome students into the school just past the entrance, serving as the floor of the gathering circle. Ness said the piece was meant to symbolize each of the 3 communities of Gitinyao, Gitwangak, and Gitsagekla coming together to form a powerful vortex. The Gitsan West Secondary School is in its final phases of completion and is expected to open in the fall for the upcoming school year. Moving on to federal news, Prime Minister Trudeau met yesterday in Ukraine with those in G7 to discuss how Canada will work with Ukraine going forward. Adrian Gabriel of CTV was over on site in Kyiv.
I love Canada.
A proclamation of affection, though on day 1096 of Russia's invasion, pleasantries took a back seat to the deadly threat facing Ukraine, Europe, and democratic world order.
It's not just about Ukraine. It's about the rules and the values and the principles of sovereignty, of independence, of territorial integrity that protects every country in the world.
At the table, leaders from across Europe echoed a grave concern that their country may be next if Russia's show of force on Ukrainian soil is legitimized by Western democracies.
The Ukraine is fighting the fight also for Europe and Nordics and Baltics, everybody. Also United States, because Iran, North Korea, everybody would assess that they can do whatever they want.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing that Canada will send $5 billion in aid to Ukraine using funds seized from Russian assets, as well as additional infantry and armored combat vehicles, while keeping the door open to possible Canadian troops on the ground in Ukraine as part of any future peace deal.
Everything is on the table because we need to make sure that might no longer makes right in this world.
Earlier in the day, American President Donald Trump joined a call with Zelensky, Trudeau, and other G7 leaders as fears mount that the new U.S. administration could pull their military support for Ukraine.
In the past 2 weeks, when we've seen a shift in the transatlantic partnership, we have to wake up to a new reality. And then the question is, how do we get skin in the game?
There were also multiple concerns about Ukraine possibly being forced into an unjust peace deal. Now, this all took place today under the constant threat of rockets and drone attacks from above. The building behind me was hit just a week ago. 1 man was killed. Among the injured, a 9-year-old girl.
And just released a couple of hours ago, the United States and Ukraine have reached an agreement on a framework for a broad economic deal that would include the exploitation of earth minerals. The agreement could be signed as early as Friday, where Ukrainian President Zelensky will meet U.S. President Donald Trump. This agreement could potentially provide an opportunity to discuss military aid to Ukraine from the United States. And for Ukrainians in Canada, refugees are doing their part in ensuring that they can support the fight against Russia, which has now passed the 3-year mark. Here is Sean Lathong of CTV News over in Ontario.
Inside this Brampton warehouse, Ukrainian refugee Volodymyr Mosayev is welding a vehicle that will help fight the war. Having fled his home when Russia invaded, he's been working here ever since. He says, "We couldn't believe that it would be so long, just as we couldn't believe that Russia would invade because they're our neighbor." Mosayev is one of 250 Ukrainians working at Rochelle Smart Armored Vehicles, a company building vehicles to send to the front lines. As fighting in Ukraine continues today on the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion, many who fled can't believe that they're still here.
You never know when the missile will hit.
Anastasia Davydenko was living in Kyiv when war broke out. Soon, the war came to her neighborhood.
It was bombed that time, and when one of the missiles hit the building nearby, we decided that we should start and go out of Kyiv.
Her husband went to Poland while Anastasia came to Canada and is working as a purchasing manager. Since war began in Ukraine, Rochelle has sent 1,600 armored personnel carriers to the front lines with orders from Canada, the European Union, and the United States. Many here in Brampton are eager to do their part.
What they find in here is like not just a job. This is actually a mission to save Ukrainian and to do something for the Ukrainian.
Many of those working inside the factories say that they're optimistic that one day they can return to Ukraine and do the same job there, while Anastasia Davydenko says she thinks that the war will go on and that Russia does not want peace.
And in our own country, things are picking up fast for a possible federal election very soon. Jagmeet Singh is looking to crack down on healthcare, and the Liberal Party is making a steady rise to the point where they're almost on par with the Conservatives in the polls. Here's Judy Trin over in Ottawa.
For public dental care.
In a room full of healthcare workers, Jagmeet Singh is trying to reframe President Donald Trump's threat of annexation.
He wants to replace our Canadian healthcare system with an American healthcare system. Well, to that we say, hell no. We don't want that.
Singh says the NDP will close loopholes to prevent corporations from directly billing patients for services and stop the further slide into privatization. But this pollster says that strategy won't work with Canadians.
Trump and tariffs is really at the top of the list. They want to hear from all of the federal politicians on that particular issue because they know that it'll have a material impact on our prosperity and the stability in the Canadian economy.
Since the Prime Minister's visit to Mar-a-Lago in November, Trump has repeatedly threatened to take over Canada.
They get 95% of their product from the United States. I think they have to become the 51st state.
Advocates worry precious funds will be diverted to thwart Trump's threats at the expense of improving medical care.
We could end up in a situation where we are spending millions and millions of dollars of wasted money when we could be investing in better futures for everyone.
Merci tout le monde. Merci d'être ici dans une belle journée d'Ottawa.
Since Justin Trudeau stepped down, the race to replace him has resulted in a dramatic shift in the polls. The Liberals are closing the massive double-digit Conservative lead to single figures and continue to siphon support from the New Democrats. But Singh says he's not going anywhere.
I absolutely should be leading. I will be leading. And there's an important decision for Canadians.
In less than 2 weeks, the Liberals will choose their new leader. Singh expects a snap election to be called and says the NDP will be ready.
Coming up next, why provincial parks have a new name on Google Maps. Welcome back to CFTK-TV. Well, after President Trump signed an executive order with Google, some provincial parks here in Canada have now being called state parks on Google Maps, which has created some chaos online. Kathy Lee reports on if this is something to monitor.
Breathtaking vistas with unique charm and allure. The country's provincial parks treasured by Canadians. So when some of them were labeled as state parks on Google Maps, many were outraged.
Definitely very shocking and surprised.
I was mortified.
That is not okay to me.
Canadian Google Maps users are reporting errors to the tech giant, marking the parks as having incorrect designations and suggesting edits to the category.
I went to suggest an edit and then had noticed provincial park was completely removed as a category on Google Maps.
The latest comes after the company changed the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America after President Donald Trump's executive order. The search engine also removed certain events and designations designations from its calendar like Black History Month and Pride, though Google maintains that decision was logistical. In a statement, the tech giant says it hasn't made any changes to the way it labels parks in Canada, saying the vast majority of parks have had their existing labels for several years and that they'll be updated to avoid confusion.
I don't buy that. It's been provincial for as long as I remember it to be.
One expert says Trump wanting to make Canada the 51st state is contributing to the recent strong nationalism in the country.
It is creating the sensitivity that anything that might have existed in the past that Canadians really didn't take very seriously, they now feel more offended by.
I am on edge, as I don't want to be part of the United States. I am a Canadian.
And as Canadians, many feel Trump's threats or a designation change on Google Maps are an attack on their identity. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
And now we turn our attention to the local weather forecast for tonight and for the week ahead. Tonight on the north coast, it should rain with about 5 to 10 millimeters in total. Winds should be coming from the southeast at 20 kilometers per hour, increasing to 80 just before morning time. The temperature should be steady, right around 7 degrees. For this week's forecast, expect a pretty rainy week overall, including tomorrow, where there will be 20 millimeters in total. Thursday might have some sun, however, with some clouds in there as well. The high will be 9 degrees on Friday, while the low will be 3 degrees on Saturday night. Terrace and Kitimat will have showers tonight, with winds coming from the south at 20 kilometers per hour, changing to the north overnight, and the temperature should be around 3 degrees in total. And Terrace and Kitimat should also be fully cloudy and rainy for the next week, with periods of rain for the next 4 days until Sunday, where cloudy conditions may arise. The high will be 7 degrees on Wednesday and Friday, while the low will be +1 on Saturday night. Finally, in the Bulkley Valley, tonight should be mainly cloudy with a 30% chance of showers or flurries overnight, and the low will be +1. For the upcoming week, some available sun for the next couple of days with a potential for rain or flurries, but then heading into the weekend, you can expect some cloudier conditions with steady temperatures. The high will be 8 degrees tomorrow, and the low will be -3 on Saturday night. And now we take a look at your roadside report for around the Northwest. For additional updates, make sure to check out drybc.ca. On Highway 16, there is water pooling on Haida Gwaii, limited visibility between Skeena and Whitsett, electrical maintenance in Burns Lake, and slippery sections from Fraser Lake to Vanderhoof. Highway 37 has limited visibility from Kitimat to Kitwanga and compact snow from Cranberry Junction to the Yukon border. Highway 37A has compact snow and bridge maintenance 8 kilometers west of Miziaden Junction. The Nishka Highway has limited visibility with fog, and Telegraph Creek Road has compact snow. And these are what the cameras were looking like from around the Northwest. Still to come, how tariffs will affect the softwood lumber industry in British Columbia. Hello again. Well, flu reports are up around the country, and physicians are saying that there could be a linked cause. It has been almost 5 years now since the COVID-19 pandemic, and that has left some lasting effects on citizens from around the nation. With more, here's Andrew Johnson of CTV News.
It's a flu season that started late, and a week away from March still hasn't peaked.
There's been a lot of influenza cases across the country, and significant hospitalizations associated with that as well.
The latest Canadian Flu Watch report shows the percentage of positive influenza tests right now is the highest recorded in 5 years. Parts of British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec are seeing the biggest jumps. And more flu means more people are feeling sick enough to visit their doctor or head to the emergency room.
We are seeing a lot in the hospital. It is the time in the season that we would expect to see a lot of influenza, and the tests are positive, and I think mixed with a fewer number of people who actually got the vaccine this year. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of worse disease.
New data from BC bears that out. So far this season, 25% of the eligible population is vaccinated. Last year, at this time, the number was more than 28%. That's close to 200,000 people who may be more likely to get very sick.
You know, in 2025, we've had 5 years of vaccine for a variety of reasons, whether it's COVID or RSV or influenza. And I think people are a little bit tired of it. But of course, the disappointing thing is that despite us being tired of it, doesn't mean that the virus is going to give us a break.
Experts say confidence in the public health system has been eroded, and governments need to increase access.
That takes resources, but it really means bringing vaccines to the people rather than bringing people to the vaccine.
This year's delayed flu season is expected to outlast winter, potentially dragging on into April. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
And as we are 1 week away from tariffs hitting Canada on imports from the United States, one industry that will affect the country, and especially British Columbia, is softwood lumber. Robert Buffum has more on this developing story.
Softwood lumber, vital to BC's economy, is already struggling under existing duties of nearly 15% imposed by the U.S., a tax expected to double soon. The industry will be hammered if Trump's threatened tariffs of 25% additional on all goods go ahead.
Even without Donald Trump's tariff, a 30% tariff on our industry, or duty on our industry, is going to be devastating for it.
With the deadline for Trump's tariffs looming just over a week away, BC Conservative leader John Rustad pitched the plan Monday of imposing carbon taxes on thermal coal exported by the states through the Port of Vancouver, hoping to help the industry negotiate existing softwood lumber duties down.
Vancouver is providing a service in terms of shipping thermal coal. We don't use thermal coal. It's an opportunity for us to look at it from a perspective of some leverage to be able to try to get a deal done on softwood lumber.
The Premier notes this is federal jurisdiction, but says he welcomes a feisty approach towards our American neighbors compared to the Conservatives' past preference for diplomacy in dealing with Trump.
There are big challenges with a federally regulated industry of railways and ports, but I am happy to work with the member to find ways to retaliate against unfair tariffs.
Today, Trump said the 25% tariffs on all Canadian goods are indeed proceeding next Tuesday.
The tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule.
How much the separate duties on softwood lumber are scheduled to increase was supposed to be unveiled last week, the forestry minister not mincing words in his frustration with the growing uncertainty.
It could be any time. We were expecting it Thursday. We waited Friday. It just seems to be an absolute, pardon my use of language, show down there.
The next week will undoubtedly be stressful and full of uncertainty for BC's biggest export industry, facing the possibility of 55% tariffs from its biggest trade partner.
And now we turn our attention to the stock market, where we once again have a sizable drop in the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar is down over 0.3 of a penny. The price of gold is down $44.40. Oil is down $1.77. Natural gas is up 15 cents, and aluminum is down $46. In Toronto, the TSX is up about 53 points. The Venture Index is down 10.20. In New York, the Dow Jones is up 216, and NASDAQ is down over 260. Welcome back. An MLA on the island was under scrutiny recently for her comments on residential schools, which has left the Conservative Party having to respond to the press. Here's Abigail Turner of CTV.
The former Kamloops residential school is at the center of a heated controversy centered on a social media post made by Conservative MLA Dallas Brody.
The stand I'm taking is rooted in the need for truth.
The post, denounced by First Nations leaders as racist and abhorrent, reads, "The number of confirmed child burials at the former Kamloops Indian residential school site is 0. No one should be afraid of the truth." Her party leader, a former Indigenous Affairs minister, has already asked her to delete it.
I was concerned that there may be misinterpreted as opposed to being about the fact that there hasn't been any graves at that particular site or any bodies at that particular site exhumed or found. Versus the whole issue of the residential schools.
The Attorney General critics post was made Saturday and remains up.
I don't think that standing for truth takes away anything from the severity of what happened at the residential schools. In fact, I believe that more truth is better and makes their case actually better.
Her post is about a lawsuit involving a BC lawyer who alleges mistreatment by the Law Society of BC to add the word potential before unmarked graves in the training materials about residential schools. 215 unmarked anomalies were found near the former Kamloops residential school in 2021.
I'm disappointed that her first question to me as her critic would be based on a form of denialism of residential school.
Just about every residential school in the country has a cemetery, has children who passed at a residential school who have been buried there. So that's just the facts.
The Union of BC Indian Chiefs says funding for further investigations of residential school sites has dried up, but investigations continue, and they're calling for Brody to apologize. Neither the Law Society or the lawyer involved are commenting as the matter is before the courts. Abigail Turner, CTV News, Vancouver.
And just this week, Roberta Flack passed away at the age of 88, who was one of the pioneers in soul music. John Venavali Rao has our final story of the day.
Roberta Flack once said this was a song she instantly knew was magic. Killing me softly with this song. And combined with her soulful voice, it became part of the soundtrack of the 70s. I feel like making love. An artist who was also a Grammy trailblazer.
In fact, she was the first person and the first artist to win back-to-back Grammy Awards for Record of the Year.
Reacting to the news of her death, Jennifer Hudson calling Flack one of the greatest soul singers of all time. Born in North Carolina, Flack played her first piano at age 9. Initially, her goal was to be a concert pianist, but turned to singing, releasing her debut album in 1969 and struggling to get attention. Ever I saw your face. That is, until Clint Eastwood asked to use one of her songs in a movie. It pushed the song to #1 on the Billboard chart. Killing me softly. Then came that other big hit. The song landed in the Rolling Stones top 500 songs of all time, inspiring musicians like Alicia Keys and the Fugees to years later reimagine it.
When I recorded Killing Me Softly in 1972, I had the same kind of goosebumps. You know, when I sang it, performed it, recorded it, thought about it, as I do now when I hear the Fugees sing it. Tonight, I celebrate my love.
Her music spans 6 decades, but then in 2022, she announced she had ALS and could no longer sing. In a statement her publicist wrote, she died peacefully, surrounded by her family. An artist whose unmistakable voice will endure. John Venavali Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
And that'll be all for our cast tonight. Thank you very much for watching and have a good night.